I like the conversation that's going on in the chat. I don't have any actual announcements today, other than my drum kit drops this weekend, and I've been working on it for over a year. So I'll post about that on my socials. And then obviously there are tons of BeatStars opportunities. It's a holiday weekend, so things are going to change and slow down a little, and then we're going to come back with regular programming. But definitely follow BeatStars on all social media platforms because those opportunities do get posted. I believe there are new placement opportunities. If you check out your dashboard, I think I got an email, and then also when I log in, I see it there. So quick for once, very very brief intro for me, and I'm going to bring in the man of the hour. I know you know who he is. Yeah. So Cloud9 said, "Damn, DJ Payne got Parks. That's freaking huge." Let's bring our freaking huge guest on. Parks, how you feeling?
I'm not that huge.
You're tall though, right?
I'm tall. I'm 6'5".
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's vertically huge, maybe not horizontally.
Yeah, I'm horizontally not huge. The opposite.
Okay, well, we're all big in our own ways. And actually, my feelings were really thriving. I think the first time we spoke, and you told me my mixes were not trash, so I appreciate that. How's the first 6 months of 2021 been?
For me, chaos, absolute chaos, but it's all right. Yeah. It's part of the game.
Yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit about that, but let's get into the more positive stuff.
Please.
You wear a lot of proverbial hats in this business. Which art form came first for you? How did you start your music career?
Well, I guess music overall, the first thing I did was play guitar. Well, no, the first thing I tried to do was play trumpet. That shit was hard. That was in like fourth grade though. And then a couple years later, I played guitar. And then by high school, probably 12, 13, 14 years old, I got into rap and wanted to rap and tried to rap. And around that time, computer software kind of started to get popping, and we started to figure out, me and my partners started to figure out how to, make beats and record and everything on that. And I started to excel at that. So I kind of stopped rapping and just became a producer, which then by default, I became the engineer because I was the guy with the studio with the beats and the computer and all that shit. So yeah, I guess first musician, second rapper, third producer, fourth engineer. But engineering is what I became the most famous for, I guess.
What made you gravitate towards engineering out of all of the options that you had?
I guess, well, again, for one, I was kind of just doing it as a de facto producer studio for my rap group at the time. And then I realized it was something that you could actually make money. I never even knew that was really a job until I went to college. I went to college at SUNY Oneonta for music business, and I had a lot of professors that kind of just preached there's more than one way to make money in music. And me, in my head, I'm like, I'm going to make beats and make money. And they're like, yeah, but you also engineer, right? So you could do that and make money. And so I guess how that became a career is I had to do an internship to graduate college. And so I went to a studio and interned as an engineer. That studio was called Hinge in Chicago, and they were doing Lupe Fiasco's first album at the time, wrapping that up. And Kanye did a lot of stuff there. They did a lot of big gospel records and jazz records in Chicago. So I realized that this is like a valid, lucrative kind of career. And hey, at the same time, I'm still making beats the whole time. I could probably meet some people to sell beats to.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's a crazy story. But that begets another question about formal education insofar as the actual craft, and then insofar as the music business in general is concerned. Let's start generally. Do you think formal education is necessary? As someone, I don't know, because I didn't go to school for any of this stuff. Do you feel?
Did you ever take music classes though, like theory or instrument lessons or anything? Because you could play, I think, right?
Yeah. No, way back. Yeah, I had some classical training in terms of. Say it again.
I said that's education though, but carry
Yeah.
on.
Well, in terms of the music business, like my piano teacher wasn't telling me what a PRO was. So when you jumped into the actual music business, did you feel like you're because you took your degree is in music business, not necessarily music theory, right?
Correct. Although I had
Yes.
a lot of theory, and I minored in audio production, which was just super rudimentary shit. But to answer your question, with I don't know if you got the full question out. I don't think the education is necessarily required, but I think it can be really helpful. Like by the time I went to college, I only went to college because that's kind of like what my parents wanted me to do, and I felt like it was the right thing to do, I guess, or whatever. Um, and I just happened to find a school that had music business. So I was like, oh, that's more interesting than going for whatever the fuck. I don't care about anything else. You know what I mean? So it was more of just trying to fulfill family and societal norms. But that being said, at school, I took theory classes, I took piano classes, I took music history classes, I took music business classes, I took accounting classes, I took marketing classes, some specific to music, some not. I took business law classes, some specific to music, some not. Law classes in general. I actually thought I was going to go to law school at one point. But I say all that to say that while I don't think it was required, I think it can be super duper helpful. And I think it helped me in my career more importantly than anything I learned in a class was just thinking outside of the box. Again, I went in there making beats with my rap crew, and I thought that was the career. And it can be for some people, for sure, but there's a million other careers in music related to making beats or just in the music business in general that I would have never even thought about had I not, gotten that education.
I think that's important too, because a lot of us jump into the music business thinking we're going to have this really clear trajectory and our roles are going to remain static. I jump in, I'm going to be a producer or I'm going to be a rapper or whatever. And then as our journey progresses, there are all these other directions that the universe is kind of pulling us in. Like maybe you shouldn't rap. Maybe you should focus on being a DJ, or maybe you're better at management than singing. And a lot of people aren't receptive to those pulls, but it sounds like you were receptive to those pulls.
Yeah, I think I've said this before on probably the podcast or maybe in a different interview, but they used the example of Tommy Lasorda while he was the general manager of the Cardinals who won the World Series, or at least were in the World Series. He was still running a law firm at the same time. And, they used other examples of producers that were DJing. And, the more I got in the business, I realized that all my hero producers were DJing to make at least a portion of their income, if not a major portion of their income. So I got kind of opened up to it pretty quickly. And then on top of that, all that shit has helped me now as a podcaster because I have kind of a broader scope on the world than just I make beats and this is what I do. You know what I mean? I think all of it has been very synergistic, if that's a word.
Yeah, well, and thank you for that, because there are a lot of music podcasts and content creators that are speaking on music business topics, and some of the more complex ones, not just, who's having sex with who and who's beefing with who, but, breaking down and analyzing contracts and lawsuits and this and that. And some of the stuff they say, man, oh my gosh, it's just way out of their pay grade.
There is an absolute ton of misinformation on the internet. There's a lot of good information too, but there's a lot of bad information, and it's pretty difficult to weed through. And that's even outside of music. That's everything. Health advice, political advice, all types of financial advice.
Health advice.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad shit out there. But that being said, there's a lot of good shit out there as well. So, I don't want to villainize YouTube and some of the alternative ways to get information that exists, because overall information is, I think having more information is better than having no information. So I kind of forgot where we were going. No, I forgot where we were going.
We'll shift gears. Where you referenced your favorite producers also being DJs. Who are some of them?
I mean, Premiere, obviously, who I've worked with closely for over a decade now. Just Blaze, Alchemist. I don't think the RZA did a whole lot of DJ sets, but he was one of my favorite producers coming up. Havoc as well. I don't think he did a lot of DJing either, but they were kind of also MCs, so maybe that's what precluded them from doing that. But you name it. I mean, most producers also go out and DJ because you can make a lot of money doing that shit.
Yeah.
And you're a DJ as well, correct? Correct me if
Yep.
I'm wrong. Yeah, I mean, there's a valid income source there on a local level, on a national level, on an international level.
Yeah, there definitely is. So speaking of income, at what point did music become your job after finishing college?
Let me think. In terms of time, I graduated. I did an internship at Hinge in Chicago. At the same time, I was working at a bar, and then I did that for a year, and then I moved to New York and worked at Manny's Music, which was just Sam Ash with a different logo on it, for a year. And in that time period, I met a gentleman by the name of Charles Roan, who had a studio at Headquarters, formerly D&D. He was business partners with Premiere. And I used to like smoke weed on the roof and kind of be a general fuckhead there. But in doing that, I kind of knew where some shit was. I was also like interested in old weird samplers and shit, and they would keep all that shit in the storage in the back. Anyway, he needed some cables and some weird sampler shit or something. I was like, oh, I know exactly where that is. I'm also high and dealing with anxiety at the time, so I'm like, I'll run upstairs in the stock room and get this shit for you. And then he tells me he works with Premiere, and I say, can I get a job? And he said, well, you can come intern. And I did that for maybe 4 years. No, 4 years, 4 months. And I hated my job. And I was a general. I was a very good salesman, but they just didn't like me because I showed up when I wanted to and did what I wanted to. So they fired me. And then they hired me back, and then they fired me again. And I said, I can't do this shit. Charles, I want to do music full time. And at that time, he was friends with Joe in the past, but Joe Budden. Preem was working on Street Hop with Royce, and Joe came in to do a session for that. And they were starting Slaughterhouse at the time, and serendipity just kind of worked out that he wanted to record there. Charles didn't want to do that shit because he was making money doing a million other things. He said, you can actually do these guys' sessions here if you want. And then that became a tracking engineer gig for me. And that's kind of how I started. And through that, I got production gigs, I got mixing gigs, I got DJ gigs. And that was kind of the start. But it was all a very gradual thing. I started off making $20 an hour working sometimes, and had 3 roommates in a 1-bedroom apartment. You know what I'm saying? New York is ridiculous with prices, so I had to do what I had to do. And it just built from there, man. One thing leads to another in this business.
Yeah, I like how someone said $20 an hour is still fire though, but I doubt they live in New York. That being said,
I can't see you in the chat. I guess maybe because I'm not logged in.
it's labeled comments on the right side.
Comments. Okay, I would like to see what people are saying. Anyway,
there's actually a lot of talk going on in that chat about finances. I want to ask you a question following up, but what was I going to say? The tracking job. Were you already experienced with tracking because you had rapped already?
Well, I had a crew, and my crew was like 10 deep, upstate New York. So I was familiar with tracking because I tracked a lot.
Yeah. Well, because I had Ricky P from Taylor Gang on last week or the week before that. Okay. And his big advice for both aspiring rappers and beat makers was to learn how to track and just experiment tracking your own voice, whether or not you're serious about rapping. And I wonder that, because I did that when I first started. I was tracking myself. Do you make that same recommendation just so that you can parlay that information into more opportunities?
Absolutely. I wish that I had time to still be a tracking engineer, because you learn more as a tracking engineer than you will damn near in any other position in the music business. because you have, especially if it's like a studio that you're kind of renting out, or if you make your own studio and make it available to rent out, you'll get all types of shit in the door. You know, you'll get singers, you'll get rappers that rap like this way and rappers that rap that way. And you might get guitar players and drummers and all this shit. And all these things become tools in your toolbox to use when it comes to making beats or making songs or mixing songs. Like, I learned so much shit just from someone coming in and say, hey, I want it to sound like this. And now I got to figure out how to make it sound like this. You know? So, yeah, I think that's a fucking awesome entry level job for the music business.
What was your kind of process of figuring out how to make something sound like this? Because that's one of those things where I think on the one hand, a lot of us we have this visceral reaction to that, and like, I'm not trying to make anything sound like anything else. Like, yeah, whatever, shut up. But then on the other hand, it's like part of that is just masking our fear of not being able to reach that level. So
that's deep.
It's an intimidating process to have someone come into your studio and say, okay, make it sound like this, and what this sounds like could be, you know, another engineer with 10 more years experience and a way nicer studio than what you have.
Well, a couple things. I think that you're right. I'd never thought about the theory that it might be masking our own insecurity about not being able to achieve X, Y, or Z. But I guess to answer your question, when you're a tracking engineer, you're kind of like a bartender or a waitstaff. It's not your song, man. So if someone says, I want the corny auto-tune effect or the corny telephone ad-lib effect, you do it. Now, if you're not good at it and you can't figure it out, sometimes that shit can lead up to creating a new sound. And I think that happens quite a bit, is people trying to make something happen and it doesn't work. And then you end up with a whole new sound that's fucking crazy. So don't be afraid if you don't know. Like, part of being a tracking engineer or anything in music is lack of fear, I think. Just getting over yourself ultimately and over your fears and just trying shit and putting it out or showing people and see what they say. And I think that goes back to tracking engineer duties. But again, in being that tracking engineer, not only can you stumble upon some new shit that maybe you fell into because you were not technically proficient enough, but you'll also have someone say, yo, I want the weird auto-tune effect on the background. And then maybe you do acoustic rock music for a career. Not that anybody in here probably does that, but maybe they do. They might take that auto-tune effect thing and put it on a banjo and it sounds crazy. You know what I mean? Like, there's shit that you learn as a tracking engineer that you can apply to a million different things, I guess, is the bottom line. I hope I answered your question. I don't know if I did or not.
Yeah. There's a lot to ask about. So you did bring up that idea that as a tracking engineer, that song isn't yours.
Right.
Obviously, you're a part of creating the song. And I think that's a big topic when it comes to the music business. We're always talking about equity, especially beat makers. We always want our split. We always want our, you know, royalty points, our underlying composition ownership, all of that. How does that work with engineering in your experience? I know everything just really depends on the individual situation, but in terms of equity,
it really depends completely on the situation and the individual. I sometimes am completely work for hire and I don't own shit. You know what I mean? And I do what the client wants me to do, and that's cool. And then sometimes I own everything and I'm the engineer and I say what to do. And then sometimes it's in between. Sometimes I add a keyboard line or a drum line and now I'm entitled to some of the publishing or some royalties, but they're still kind of the boss. And there's a huge gamut of situations that can arise where you are in complete ownership and you are in zero ownership. And you kind of have to be open to that, I think, to be successful. If you want to own everything that you do, it's going to be slow. It's going to be slow. And that, as a producer, I'm that guy. I don't really want to do shit if I'm not going to own it or if I'm not going to have kind of complete-ish control. Obviously, anytime you're collaborating with someone, you're not going to be in complete control. It should never be a dictatorship. But as a producer, I want to be that guy. And as a result of that, I only place the records that I want to place, but I'm okay with that because I make money doing other things. As an engineer, you probably can't be as stubborn on ownership because you're not going to own everything, and nor should you be entitled to. Honestly, I mean, sometimes as an engineer, you're only there for your technical prowess, and sometimes the client even has the technical prowess, they just don't want to do the shit. So you're not really entitled to ownership. That being said, if you write a melody line or write some lyrics or arrange the song or produce the vocals, you can and should look to get some type of profit share, whether it's a very low percentage or whatever. Even if it's just the credit alone, you should ask for it, and you should have the courage to ask for it. Although that can be tricky sometimes.
Yeah, how do you muster up the courage to have those uncomfortable conversations?
You got to just do it. You got to rip the Band-Aid off and just do it. And if it doesn't work out, you got to be okay with what may result from that. Like if they say, go fuck yourself, but I still want you to be my engineer, cool. You got to be okay with that. Or they say, yeah, man, of course, you deserve that. And then you get whatever you ask for. I mean, there'll probably be some negotiation, but yeah, you got to just do it. You got to do it. And you actually have to prove your value too. I mean, that's the thing, that the creator mantra that we've been preaching, rightfully so, for the past few years. I mean, when I say we, I mean anybody that's kind of in this media space. It doesn't apply to everyone. It really does. Like, everybody doesn't deserve a piece necessarily of equity, of ownership, because with that becomes the right to make decisions and turn down decisions, and everyone shouldn't necessarily have that. Unfortunately to say.
Yeah, well, needless to say, it's contentious and tricky. I know with it should be more straightforward when it comes to co-writers and that kind of thing, but it's not straightforward at all, because you have all these terms like co-writer, which people already associate with having written lyrics rather than music, and then that becomes a whole miscommunication between someone who made a beat and someone who raps, and people walk into these situations with their kind of preconceptions about how the music business is supposed to work, because maybe they watch one of those YouTubers that we talked about at the beginning that don't know what the hell they're talking about, so they walk in there with their chest out, and it's an ugly conversation.
I actually had a point about that I wanted to make earlier. I was just thinking about this because I came under fire by some YouTuber at one point for saying this. But when we were talking about there are other careers available in music other than just being a producer or a musician, I actually encourage more people to do that. I think we need that. We need the guy that wanted to be Jimi Hendrix but didn't work out to run labels. You know what I mean? We need the guy that wanted to become the next RZA or Metro Boomin, and it didn't work out, to run the labels. Because currently there are a lot of people in the music business that have never even done anything in music, have no background in music whatsoever, have no compassion for people that are laying their fucking soul and endangering their lives to make an income in some cases. We need more people that have actually tried to say, you know what, this wasn't for me, but I would actually be a really good manager. Anyway, sorry, side note. I didn't mean to derail.
No, that's not a derail at all. And I wonder how we encourage more of that, other than just exposing people to those possibilities.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Why were you getting criticized for that?
Oh, because I said that people that work in the business side of the music business should have some experience trying to be a musician or an artist. And some pseudo intellectual was like, well, what about DJs and rappers? And without that, all this music wouldn't exist. You're a culture vulture, da 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 da. And I'm thinking in my head, like, oh, you don't consider DJs and rappers musicians? Because I do. You're kind of telling on yourself. Anyway, that point is the flack is not the point.
Wait, so they simultaneously said rappers and DJs aren't musicians and called you a culture vulture.
Right.
Okay, I love the internet, man.
It's an insane place.
Ooh, yeah. Before we talk about the insanity of the internet, what are some because this conversation you alluded to, and then it's also a conversation that's been happening kind of unofficially in the comments area. Multiple income streams. I know you have them. You reference having them, and you also talked about how having multiple income streams actually makes your process a little more relaxed in terms of being able to engineer a project that you want to engineer, even if the money's not crazy and you don't get any equity.
Right.
What led to you developing all these income streams, and what are a couple of them that maybe more producers and engineers should be aware of?
I mean, I think everyone is probably relatively aware of them, and I've alluded to them a lot. I guess I'll start with what they are. For me personally, is tracking engineer. Although I don't do that as much these days, it still does happen. Mixing engineer, mastering engineer, producer. This is a weird subcategory of that, but additional / co-producer, that happens a lot, or someone maybe needs a sample replayed or just wants a guitar line on something or whatever. Podcaster, podcast engineer, live shows. I kind of have my own label with my partners, Passport, Gift, and Lou, although we're the only artists currently on it. We are probably going to expand at some point. That's why I say kind of a label. What the fuck else? That might be the major. Oh, I think I said podcast studio owner. Couple studios actually, and then there's things outside of music. So that's that. How did I get there? Is kind of what I described earlier. Is just starting off as a musician, and starting off as a and tracking engineer professionally, and then moving on to mixing engineer, and then, hey, this guy knows all the songs. He's mixed them. He's recorded them. He may have added additional production. Why wouldn't he be the DJ on tour? Through that, I get other DJ gigs, although I don't do them as often. Obviously, seriously, not in the last year because they don't exist. It just comes from embracing my different interests, I guess. Is the main way to do it. And why is it important? Is I don't really care. Like you said, I can do the gigs that I want to do because I want to do them, not because I need to do them, because I have money coming in from different places. It's whatever.
So in terms of multiple revenue streams, just extending that conversation to revenue and income in general, a lot of people at the beginning were talking about retirement accounts for musicians, specifically, producers, and there really aren't. We're self-employed, so we have to take that on ourselves. How did you start learning about that stuff, and what advice can you give a producer now to start planning for their future?
I'm still learning about it now, honestly, and I'm not doing as good a job as I should be, which is really sad and unfortunate. But it's difficult when the way that the U.S. economy at least is set up is not really designed for independent contractors in general. Like unemployment and healthcare and benefits of any sort are not really available to us unless we make them available to us ourselves, and it can get very expensive. That being said, I'm very frugal with money. I invest my money, and I try to live very well below my means, and that thus far is kind of the best that I can do, and stay on top of all my financial shit the best I can. And again, I think that diversifying the income is part of that. There's royalty streams for the future happening every single day that I'm working towards. That's kind of our retirement fund as producers, unfortunately, unless you are very, very good with investing and shit.
And then also in the chat, someone is encouraging us to look into buying fake followers and views to become famous. So that's another way to invest in your future. Are you one of those, Parks? Are you one of those guys that does 1,000,001 things and still has a social life, or do you struggle with that balance like the rest of us?
I mean, I'm 37 years old, so I don't necessarily need the most social life. But I do. I still hang out. I still hang out quite a bit. I try to anyway. It's not the easiest of social lives. My family mostly lives, several hours away, so I don't really see them very often. But I have friends close by and friends in the music business, and I kind of incorporate it like, excuse me, weekends, me and Passport Gift, to those that aren't familiar, he's artist that I work with really closely, and his manager, Lou, I guess my business partner, his manager. We hang out on Fridays and Saturdays and sometimes other days during the week, and we get some cognac and we get some shit to throw on the grill, and we play records and make beats. So we kind of combine it, we kind of combine it. I don't really have, the most interest in going out and doing the club scene anymore. I haven't in a long time, and obviously the last year and a half hasn't really been an option. So it's difficult, but you can do it, and you can kind of merge it, And that was even kind of how I started becoming a producer. Is I had a house that we could party at. That was part of the reason why I became a producer, because I wanted to be a producer first, but it was an added bonus that the studio was also a place where you could bring girls and weed and beer. So I think that's always kind of been part of my workflow, is like, we can make beats and party at the same time. And I'm not encouraging people to like get fucked up, to make music, but socializing and music can coexist, music creation.
Yeah, I love that. When I was living with my parents, and that was the attitude in this studio.
Yeah.
Drunk people in the studio at my parents' house. Yeah, don't do that. What was
No.
I know this is
a fine line, because you get people in there that should not be contributing and are, and you got to walk the line with that.
or just like, people not peeing in the right spot when they aim at the toilet, stuff like that. I have some horror stories. What was your you want to share one?
No.
Okay, good. I was hoping, because then I'd feel obligated to share, and I have some nasty ones, so I don't want to talk about it. I know this is a completely subjective term, but to you, what was your first big project? What was the first project that felt really validating for you?
The first, like I said, when I graduated college and I had to do the internship, like the first day I was running passes of Under Pressure, which was Lupe featuring Jay-Z, and it might have just been the two of them. But that studio I worked at was crazy. Like, I worked on Graduation album by Kanye. I had I think I worked on like 6 Grammy nominated or winning projects within that first year. That being said, I wasn't properly credited on much, if any of it. So the first thing that was like a breakthrough validation thing for me would probably be the original Slaughterhouse project in 2008 or 9.
Damn, I was gonna ask. So, are you credited on any of that stuff? Like, do you have Grammy nominations, or because
I do now.
them? Okay.
I do now, but not from them. Not from them. Unfortunately, I didn't really realize the importance of pushing for the credits. I was kind of just happy to be there and shit. You know what I mean? Which is sad, but that was the reality as a 21-year-old or whatever I was, 22-year-old. I was just happy to be there. I didn't know that I should put my foot down, and I didn't know that it didn't really cost anybody to give you an assistant engineer credit. I didn't know. And that's
crazy.
My regret in the entire history of fucking music is like, I worked on all these amazing, great projects and don't fucking have anything to show for it.
I'm just impressed that as an intern, you were working on Kanye projects and the Lupe album.
That was part of the thing that they sold me on when they hired me at the internship. Is he was like, you go to these other studios, you will be in the bathroom. Here, you will set up the mics, and you will. It was an all analog studio still at the time, so you will recall all the outboard gear. Which, to anybody that's on here and is under the age of 35, that means all them little fucking knobs in the studio you have to put back exactly to how they were at the last session, and you have to note them all on a piece of paper with a pencil. And it was a fucking nightmare because none of it's all accurate. You can put it to the same spot on the machine, but the machine's from 1975, so you got to wiggle it. Anyway, it was a lot of work as an intern that I should have been credited as an assistant on, but I didn't realize that at the time.
Okay, so you learned the analog way. What kind of setup do you have now? Do you still have elements of analog?
A little bit. For production, I'm still, I don't want to say all analog, but mostly analog. I run. I wish that I wasn't on this webcam. I would show you guys. I still like MPC 3000, ASR 10, SP12, S950. I have Junos. I have DX7s. I have sequential synths. I have a Rhodes, a Wurlitzer. So for production shit, I still like physical shit for whatever reason. That being said, I go into Ableton and do most of the editing and transitions and sequencing and changing tempos and all that shit in Ableton. But I still, for some reason, like to get physical uh, when I'm making music. I don't know. As far as engineering, I mean, I have very nice preamps, very nice compressors that I use during tracking. But other than that, I don't use much. I used to use an outboard reverb and delay, but it's kind of a pain in the ass. Because if you want to, I have three studios really. If you include the one that I still have in my parents' house, if I need to do something while I'm at one studio or the other one, and I don't obviously have the same reverbs and delays at every single studio, nor would I have the recall sheet of what the exact settings were. It's a pain in the ass. So I do everything mixing wise in the box for the most part. But tracking, I still like to have a good compressor and a good preamp.
Okay, so before I got distracted by the gear question, oh, actually, I'm still distracted by the gear question. What do you consider a good preamp? And then what are some entry level investments that that engineers on a budget you think can start making so that they're really operating at the highest level possible given their point in their journey?
Okay, my theory on this is there's a couple of them. Some obvious ones, well, not obvious. Some first ones to get out the way. That expensive cable shit, get the fuck out of here. You don't have to spend $1 million on a cable. It makes zero difference. As long as don't get the bottom of the barrel shit that's gonna break in a week. But you don't have to get the Megami $200 mic cable. I also do not really believe in the converter hype, either D to A or A to D. I think as long as it has the amount of inputs you need and whatever functions you need, it's good enough. Preamp also would not be at the top of my list. I think the first thing I would buy if I was or recommend to buy if I was an upcoming engineer would be a good mic, which I would say. I mean, it depends on what your budget is. AKG 414 is still good. A Neumann TLM 103 are still good. They're about $1,000. Lower than that, I would get probably a Shure SM7 or Electro Voice RE20, which are good podcast mics too. But they're also good vocal mics. You might have to EQ them a little bit more, but they're good, and they're good in shitty rooms. You don't need all this insulation shit because they're not going to really pick up too much reverb tail. But yeah, converters don't mean shit to me. Preamps, a good inexpensive one would be like a Focusrite ISA. The blue one, ISA 1, is pretty good. I think Great River I think it's Great River or Grace. One of them two makes some relatively inexpensive. By relatively inexpensive, I would say $700. That are pretty good. Cheap compressors that are really good. The DBX 160 is about $300. That's really nice, pretty transparent. I don't know if FMR still exists, but the RNP and RNC are really nice, and that's what they're called. Really nice preamp, really nice compressor. They're pretty cheap. $500 for a 2-channel preamp, I think. $200 for a 2-channel compressor, I think. I use BAE 1073 stuff, which is a model of the Neve. That shit is expensive as fuck. I love it. It's built really well, but they're pretty expensive. They're like $1,000 a channel. Yeah, it just depends. I would not put the investment into converters, I guess would be my advice. I think they're all pretty decent. The Focusrite ones are pretty good. The little red ones that everyone has, Scarlets or whatever, they're pretty nice. The UAD stuff is pretty nice. I don't really like the architecture because I hate the mix window. I hate when there's like a separate thing that I have to worry about. I have to worry about my DAWs mixer and the preamps mixer, the interfaces mixer. It's a nightmare. I wish they would get away from that, but whatever.
So there are a bunch of people asking about monitors / headphones.
Okay.
What do you prefer?
There's no reason why I have so much old vintage shit, but that's the way that I am. I use Oratones and NS10 still. I think that they make, well, I know I actually bought the new Oratones that are pretty nice. You can't have those as like your main monitor though. I can use them now because I can kind of mix. I mix on laptop speakers sometimes. I can mix on kind of whatever. But I also have in my other studio next door where it's the hangout, smoke cigars, drink cognac, and grill studio. I have the Yamaha HS8s, I think they are, or 7s or 8s. They're pretty nice. And the KRK Rockets, I don't know about the new ones with the little digital shit on them, but they've always been good for making beats on. They're not the most accurate. The thing about monitors in general is that you will get used to them and learn how to make them work. And the same goes for the converters. There is a difference between converters, but they will all do the job. You just have to reference music on it. I mean, I did the first, man, I don't know, 10 years of my career on a fucking M Audio Fast Track. It was a $300 interface, maybe not even. That shit was a piece of shit. It doesn't matter. You just have to learn your speakers. You have to learn your interface, and the best way to do that is just to listen to a bunch of shit through it, and then try to make your shit sound like that shit. Put on a Drake record and find one of your beats that sounds like a Drake record, and try to make it match. Put on a Griselda record. I'm not sure that you'd be shooting for that as far as sonic excellence, but if that's what you're going for, put that on and try to make your shit sound like that. But yeah, I have no headphones. What do I use? These are Pioneer. They're DJ headphones. I don't remember what the model on them is at all, but they were my favorite. They were probably $200. They're not super high end. I like the Bayer dynamic ones. They're just too expensive, man. Headphones get broke. Like, I'm not spending $700 on headphones, and then someone's gonna drop them, or their sweat is gonna tear up the foam. Yeah.
Yeah, that I don't know. Yeah, I've too damn. Some of it's too damn much, but so you're
Sennheisers, right? Those are nice too.
I got the Sennheisers, and then I also have, which I like. I also have the AKGs, the Quincy Jones ones, because they're open back, which was way better for low end mixing. Yeah, for me at least. But yeah, it's all the reason I even got new ones is because I had ear tools, and I used those things until they literally disintegrated. So, and those weren't high end or anything. They were, maybe $100, $140. Yeah. And it was a birthday gift. Then they discontinued them. So it's like, shit, now I got to relearn how to mix in some totally different headphones.
I also don't really mix on headphones. That shit, my ears get too tired, man. Like the Sony ones that everyone has, the 7506s, I use them on film sets sometimes because they're not super pressure on the ear. Same with the AKG, the open back ones. Those are nice because you can wear them for a long time, but they're not like, both of them feel like very airy to me, and you'll kind of for me, they will make my decisions to make everything a little bit duller because they're kind of bright and airy. And for me, the DJ headphones, the Pioneers, I used to use the Technique ones a lot. Even the Beats ones, the good Beats ones that were made out of metal, those were nice too. I don't know if they still make them. I'm sure they probably make some iteration of them. But I can't mix on headphones long term. That shit, like, my ears get hot, man.
Yeah. Some of the, I'm not going to talk shit about headphones. Some of them create these weird patterns in your head that I don't really love. Uh-huh. And then, the sweat thing, like anything that I'm wearing on my head that's being flooded with sweat is probably not going to smell good a couple days from today. So Slaughterhouse, your first project that you felt some ownership of. How did that lead to such a close relationship and continued partnership with all of those artists, but specifically Joe?
I mean, at first they hated me because it was chaos. Everyone was drinking or getting high except for me. Uh, Although I was probably drinking a little bit, but they all had separate managers. It was absolute anarchy, and they're like, "Yo, he's not fast enough." And that became a communication thing where it's just like, no, you guys have to be like specific. Like a manager would walk in and say, "Hey, pull up X, Y, and Z song," while Joel's in the booth laying a verse, or he's about to go lay a verse. It was pure chaos. But that being said, we hung out a lot and we talked about a lot of the same things. We kind of had similar opinions and similar feelings on a lot of shit, and that kind of just led to a camaraderie. I love all those guys still to this day, and I talk to them all. I probably could talk to some of them more than others. I talk to Joe obviously a million hours a week, but yeah, we kind of, with anything music and collaborative, you will find your people at some point, where you agree on enough stuff that you can spend a million hours together with, and you can, have conversations about splits and ownership without there being a bloodbath. You'll find your people eventually, and I just happened to find mine with them and a couple other of my clients who I care very deeply about, and have helped, made my career, and I've hopefully helped made their careers better.
All right, I'm gonna machine gun some questions at you because we only have about 14 minutes left. But I want to talk about a couple Twitter interactions that you've had. Not the enjoy the ride fellow one. That speaks for itself. But somebody tweeted and said that you deserved a lifetime achievement award for the audio quality you provided for the Joe Budden podcast over the years. Was this a challenge at all, given that you were used to recording songs in a completely different context before the podcast, and then how did that setup change over time?
It's been an ever evolving setup. Honestly, there's always little tweaks that I make to it on a daily basis, but no, it just starts with picking the right tools, picking the right mics, and not you can't compress things too much. You have to be like with anything on a film set, whether you consider a podcast a film set or not, it is. You got to be cognizant of the shit around you. Like the AC is blasting. That's an annoying fucking noise in your microphone. Yes, the talent might have to be a little hot, but that shit, if you want good audio quality, you got to kind of sacrifice some comfort level sometimes. So it's an ever evolving thing. Was it difficult to get there? Not really. But it was an ever evolving thing for sure. Some of the other stuff now with like lav mics that I do on film sets, that's very different. That's very different because they're all condenser mics. They're very sensitive. If you turn your head, it goes off axis and you can't hear it. That's much more challenging. They're also wireless, so you got to now learn about radio frequencies and frequency overlaps. That shit is fucking complicated and difficult.
Yeah, I don't envy you. So that's outside of my scope of understanding.
It's really fucking hard.
Yeah. Let's talk about some more tweets. Somebody expressed surprise at you having mastering credits on the new Ransom album, and your response was, "I mastered tons of albums."
Yeah.
What is, a lot of people don't know the difference. What is mastering compared to mixing?
So mastering is usually, although there are some variations of it, usually just you're getting a bounce. You're getting an MP3 essentially. You're not usually mastering MP3s, although I have sometimes. Usually you're getting a wave. Usually it is unaffected. There's nothing on the master bus, no EQ, no compression, no L2, no ozone. And you're getting all of all the songs on an album. You are compressing them and EQing them so they all kind of hit at the same level, both in tonality and in volume level. You're hopefully working with the mix engineer. In my case, that would be me. A lot of times to say, oh, this one's vocals are a little bit lower than the other songs. We need to push that one up a little bit. And then it's also sequencing, making sure that the next song comes on at the right time after the first song, and maybe overlapping them and blending it. It's kind of a DJ skill a little bit sometimes. But they're different. They're different things, and they're both important. They can be. I think mastering is a little bit less important now, but it's still important. I don't want to ever say take away from the craft of mastering engineers, because the good ones are very good and very helpful.
I don't know if you. Never mind.
What happened?
It's just it's a question about.
Is that the poke? Are you laughing about this Pokemon? Like
No, not at all. Have you added Pokemon? Have you added Pokemon cards to your investment portfolio?
I have not diversified my portfolio in that manner yet. No, maybe soon though. Maybe I'm missing out. I saw a doctor kid with a gold-plated or a diamond-studded Pokemon, so maybe I'm fucking up.
I don't understand a lot of that stuff. I look at NFTs as essentially the same thing.
They are kind of
as trading cards. So it certainly, I just don't know what the valuation of Pokemon cards are. So yeah, I'll look into it.
That's a whole fucking. There's an entire digital universe that's being built right now, like literal physical real estate. Well, not physical, sort of physical. In their world, there's physical real estate. It's crazy. I'm not educated enough, but all I know is that shit is insane.
The follow-up question to the Pokemon card question is, do you have any kind of quotas that because a lot of beat makers, they'll say, I want to make 2 beats a day, 3 beats a day, whatever. Do you have a beat making or engineering quota, or just a productivity quota in general?
No, I did though at the beginning when I first kind of went independent, or went, started my music career for real. I would make sure that I did 2 things a day, at least 5 days a week. Whether that was recording a song or mixing a song or producing a song or making a beat or 2 beats or whatever. I would try to do 2 things a day, whether, whatever discipline you want to use. And that helped me a lot. I still place beats out of those batches today because I just had a productive year. I made whatever fucking 250 work days in a year, a couple hundred beats, or a couple thousand beats. And I still pull from them today. So at one point I did. Now I don't. I work on music or entertainment in general, I guess, way too much to have a quota. Now when I have a day off or someone cancels or reschedules, I fucking take it and run with it. But I think it's
in other words, you take it and do some non-musical stuff,
laundry or mop the floor. Yeah.
All right. Last tweet I want to talk about is this exchange you had about lossless quality, and you basically said lossless streaming quality is less important than the streaming platforms giving creators their proper credits. What are some parts of the new music industry that you'd want to change?
I mean, the main thing would be, for me, creditation, because everything comes from credits. You can't get paid properly unless you're credited properly. And then from there, trickle down. I think that the streaming companies, all of them, are fucking robbing everyone. I think that, that's not true. I just think that the model is poor in my understanding of it. Hey, Taylor Swift gets streamed or Drake gets streamed the most, so we pay them the most. To me, when I turn on my Spotify or Apple or Tidal and I only play 38 Special, he should get all 10 of my dollars minus whatever splits have to happen on the. I don't want any of my money going to Taylor Swift. That's insanity to me. I think that that's how the model should be laid out, and it's not. And I don't know why. Maybe there's someone more educated than me that can explain why. But that's, to me, what the most fair solution would be, is to split it up by actual dollar amount per user. And it's all digital. I don't see why that wouldn't be a possibility.
Yeah, I think a lot of people believe that that's how it works. Yeah, and it's certain, or that everyone is getting paid for every single stream and every single view and every single play on radio or whatever, and it's just not the case. It's actually once you learn just kind of the basics of how payment systems work and how royalty payments are paid, then there's this additional, dark cavern full of all the really dirty secrets about, like you said, like whether it's black box royalties, whether it's these incentives for the superstars and this and that. It's crazy.
It doesn't make sense. It's not fair.
No, it's definitely not. It's also not fair that we only have 5 minutes left. So I got two more big questions. Pharoah Monch, hip hop legend.
Yeah,
he dropped an album, and I believe you executive produced it.
I did. I executive produced it. I produced with him, co-produced, I guess, which I'd never like anything, but whatever. I produced a couple songs with him, 3 songs maybe with him, and executive produced the entire project, mixed it, recorded a great deal of it, not all of it. Yeah, I'm proud of it, and people are loving it. Pharoah's one of my favorite artists of all time. It was with his band 13, which is Marcus Machado and Daru Jones, who are both fucking amazing at their respective instruments. It was fun. It was a long process, but it was fun. Pharoah's very particular, and it was a lot of live music, which immediately adds a lot of time to whatever you're doing. But that was like an honor and a fucking bucket list kind of thing. And we're already started on a new one, so I think we'll keep it going.
What does executive production entail?
In this particular case, sometimes sprinkling a little bit of instrumentation, coaching vocals, arranging songs, helping come up with like a lot of business conversations. And I'm not saying that like he has a whole other team that's handling a lot of the business, but coming up with ideas for rollouts and coming up with creative things to do to help push the album, and working with the mastering engineer to make sure that's right, which can be a fight sometimes. It's just for me, a lot of my executive producer credits, of which I also have several, I'm doing way more than just recording or just making a beat or two or just mixing. I'm like fucking knee deep in this project with the artist. I need my credit.
Okay. So probably a lot of producers are wearing the executive producer hat without necessarily fighting for that title.
Yeah, and you should absolutely fight for that title.
So back to producers. I'm sure you listen to a lot of music. I don't know how much, and I'm sure people are sending you music all the time. I don't know to what extent you listen. What are some of the biggest mixing mistakes that you see producers make?
Producers, I would just say, well, okay, as a mix engineer, putting reverb on like kicks or basses and shit where reverbs probably don't really belong, would be a big one. I think in general, mixing mistakes though are just overthinking shit, like trying to like side chain shit. Actually, a big one. This is a big one. I feel like a lot of people rely on mastering plugins to kind of get their shit where they want it to go, which is cool, but you need to learn how to make stems without the mastering plugin. Because I get a lot of stems that are like maxed the fuck out, and now it's just noisy. Like even if it's just noise, it's loud. It's too loud, and now I got to fight with the vocal. I got to run a bunch of filters and shit to try to unloud it. So if you're a producer out there, do not rely on anything on the master bus if you can avoid it. And if you are going to rely on it, I would start by staying away from some of those mastering suites because they kind of do a lot. They do too much. So maybe just like a L2 or L1 or something simple like that. But 2, learn how to print stems without the mastering plugin on it because it's a nightmare.
Got it. Okay, so we're actually making good time, even though some of the questions I didn't get to. One more question: how do you deal with, without getting into specifics, how do you deal with the negativity on social media?
I It's trying. It is trying on your patience, but number one, go outside. You know what I'm saying? Go outside. For me, like in the real world, I don't get this negativity. I don't deal with negativity in the real world. I don't have people fucking harassing me or saying crazy shit to me. You wouldn't. And you gotta have to realize that that's the case. There's people that are just maybe they're going through some shit themselves. Maybe they're just trying to get a reaction. Maybe they're 12 years old, literally or emotionally. You got to kind of just realize that that's going to come with it. And that's the other part is realizing that, oh, all these people care this much. They love me or love what I'm a part of or whatever. They care that much that they're going to go out of their way to flame somebody. That's a kind of a blessing. It's a negative result of a blessing, but it's a blessing.
Yeah, there's a thin line, as they say.
Yeah.
Well, once again, really appreciate you taking the time to share all of these stories and all of this advice. How do people follow you on social media to keep in touch with you throughout 2021? What's the best way?
I'm at Parks Music on everything. So if you at Parks, you will probably find me. Parks Music, you'll definitely find me. Mostly on Twitter and Instagram. I'm not really on too much else. I tried those like TikTok and shit. I'm too old for TikTok, I think.
I'm gonna make an effort, and we're around the same age. So once again, I appreciate it. Shout out to everyone that watched the session. Obviously, it's gonna be archived and reposted like every other session. Parks, appreciate your time.
I appreciate
thank you so much.
Appreciate BeatStars, and thanks for everybody for tuning in. I hope I can go back and like read some of these comments because I kind of want to see what people were saying. But
I think on Twitch, everything was positive. Just a lot of investment advice. Charizard,
okay. Dope. It's a nice little community you guys are building, man. I like this.
Yeah, well, I would appreciate you being a part of it and talking to us today. Hopefully, we can have a second interview sometime in the next year or so we can follow up and ask some of the 20 questions that I never asked during this session. I like to over-prepare. All right, Matt. Thank you, man. Have a good holiday weekend, and hope the same for everyone else.
Yeah, man. Peace. Thank you, and thanks everybody else. Appreciate you.
Peace.